Hello and welcome everybody. Today we are doing auto farming. This is part 2 of the farming series, How to Auto Farm. But I figured before I do the auto farm quickly, I'm going to show you a couple of simple automatic watering systems because that's the middle ground between the last video and the full automatic farm, so it won't take long. To start with, I've just put a water pump in as I did last time. And I'm sure everybody knows the water cannon on a piston trick, so that's what this looks like. It's made simply by making a tick timer to fire your water cannons and just activating your pistons off your button or switch. It's all very simple. Another simple idea is the water cannons on a bearing. So there's just two bearings hooked up to a controller now instead of the pistons, and it works like so. Pretty straightforward again. And the last simple watering system I'll show you is this. It's just a water cannon on a bearing and got a piston in it. This will actually allow us to do basically 4 times this area. I just am being lazy and not putting down all that dirt. But this is how it works anyway. I've put a switch on just so that I can move around, but it simply rotates and then extends and rotates again. I think I've got mine rotating a bit fast. Need to slow that down to make sure we water everything. But that's just a simple case of fine-tuning your control. There are many types of simple watering systems you can make. Anyway, we're going to move on to the why everybody's here, the auto farm. Quick tip for the placement of your farm. Obviously you need to be close by to water, but I recommend building it just outside spawning range of your other structures so that it doesn't cause enough lag to bring your game down and you're close enough to respond to it and get to it easily. For this build, the big stuff you're going to need are 4 vacuum hoppers, 3 water cannons, 2 chests, 8 fully upgraded pistons, 4 level 2 controllers, assorted vacuum pipes and circuitry to make it work, along with a few bearings and wheels. Plus probably around a dozen level 1 sensors to make the whole thing function. I know this is pretty expensive as far as components go to build, especially upgrading all of the pistons. However, it does work really well and it is quite simple to build and operate, so that's why I'm sharing it with you. I also can't give you an exact component list because I'm sort of building this as I go a little bit, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to use. You are obviously also going to need your blocks of choice to actually build the whole structure. I would personally recommend concrete, preferably concrete level 3 if you can make it. To start with, simply make a row of 3 vacuum hoppers like so. Place your 4th on the front in the center, then place your 3 water cannons on the back like so, so you end up with a flat surface on the top. Next, take your 2 chests and place them on the center row like so. Finally, plumb the middle row into the remaining hoppers. Just like so. You should end up with all the hoppers in this row connected to that chest and this single hopper connected to that chest. The next important thing to do is to change the direction of this arrow by pushing E on it, because this is going to act as our harvester. These 3 are going to act as our planters, and this is obviously our watering row. Put an elbow on the center of each row. With the sensor on top, just like so. You should end up with a sensor in the center of each row. Then add an AND gate to each sensor for later on. To connect up our 3 rows, it's the sensor into the AND gate and the AND gate into the 3 items in its row. So sensor to AND gate and then into my hoppers. When you're finished, you should end up with 3 tidy rows like so. So now each time we trigger one of these sensors, that row is going to activate. And if we have seeds in the chest, our planters should plant because the arrows are pointing down. And if there's any grown plants below our harvester over here, when the sensor triggers, it should harvest and suck them up into this chest. Now we just need to put the bit on it to make it move backwards and forwards. That's where all the pistons and the rest of the sensors come in. I'm going to start placing some wheels on by putting a piece of pipe down. Make sure you keep 6 blocks between the bottom of your hoppers and ground level once your wheels are on, because that will put you at the correct height for your harvester to harvest all 3 rows. So I'm making my wheels like so. Once on the ground, I have 6 blocks of height to my hoppers. Perfect. So now we have a mobile platform on bearings with our 3 rows completely free underneath, ready for us to put our farm down. Let's stick the pistons on this now. To do this, I am simply going to place an elbow on the back row of my water cannons and place my 4 pistons on like so. Whoops. Like so. Finally, connect the 2 pistons with some blocks while it is still on the lift to ensure that it is a solid piece. Then drop it next to your rear wall like so and build a box around it. Remember to leave 1 block of clearance all the way around, and then on your center row place a block either side. You may have to move this out of the way to do that. Place a bearing on each of those. And finally weld in your farm on the bearings. If done correctly, you should end up with a perfectly level farm. Here on the back wall, I'm going to start the circuitry we need. We're going to need 1 memory bit, and I'm going to put a safety on it. I'll put it down out the way, just in case we sprint past one of the sensor and we create a half tick. If you're unsure about the memory bit, look at my memory logic tutorial and you should be able to understand that. Then we need to place our 4 controllers. Each of the bottom 3 controllers is also going to need an AND gate. So to set this all up, the top gate is OR, these 2 are NOR. Start with the OR gate and work your way around. You'll create that. Actually, let's put the safety up here. It will make for tidier wiring. Then if you take your output and your ON and feed it back into that as your safety. This OR gate is going to act as the output for our entire circuit. So this OR gate will go into the first controller and into each AND gate. Each AND gate will connect to its appropriate controller like so. Connect the first 2 pistons to the top controller and so on all the way down, making sure you keep them nice and even. I am actually going to disconnect the bottom 3 controllers for now. We'll connect them later on, and you'll see that's because as I start to program this, it's much easier if you only do 1 controller at a time. But that is basically all the circuitry we're going to need. Now we're going to use a couple of sensors to turn it on and a couple of sensors to turn it off. At this point, I can't go much further without building a bit more of the framework or structure around it so that I have space to actually put some things down, so I'm gonna do that. I'm simply gonna start by building a big concrete box around everything. Remember to leave 1 block of clearance around everything, including this rear swivel. Make sure it's not touching the back wall. There needs to be clearance so that everything can move freely and nothing rubs on anything. If anything rubs on stuff, it's gonna cause lag in your game, and you don't want lag, so just leave space. I've started placing down the dirt. Yes, this farm is only going to be 3 blocks wide, but you can make it as long as you want, simply by adding in more pistons. Your first row should be just in front of your hopper. If you can see that, You don't want to grow your plants underneath your farm. On the center of the back row, place 3 blocks up and a sensor on top. You can make this a solid wall if you want, but I like to leave it open so that I can walk through. Either on one of the pillars, or I'm going to put mine here on the back wall, another AND gate. In order to connect your sensors, you are going to have to connect them to the main structure, so make sure you connect them somehow. Do not block the wheel or the farm in any way. So the floor is probably your best way of connecting them. So I like to put in a delay to ensure that my whole crop is ripe before I harvest, so that I don't leave any plants behind. To do that, simply put in a timer and run it through the timer like so. I'm going to set the timer to 5 seconds for now, just for testing purposes, but when the farm is complete, I will be putting the timer up to the maximum of 1 minute to ensure all the crops are ripe before I harvest. Set the range of your sensors to the maximum 4 blocks. To set up our first controller, which is the one that is connected, simply go to both of them and set them to 3, 6, let me move out the way of the farm, 9, 12, and finally 15, like so. Leave it on its slowest speed and do not set loop. When we trigger both of these sensors, which I can simulate by placing these blocks here, we'll have a 5-second delay and the farm will start to move forward with a short pause at each row. Next thing you're going to need to do is place a roof. Make sure you leave 1 block of clearance above the top so the farm doesn't scrape on the roof, and the row that you've built all your sensors on needs to be left clear the whole way along. With your first controller extended out as the farm is now, come to the front row of the chest and place a sensor facing down with 4 blocks of range. So simply, as that piston gets to its maximum length, on the last block our chest is going to trigger that sensor. Now that sensor will come into our second AND gate along with the on switch, and we will put those same movements into this controller now, just like so. In order to stop your farm pulsing on the spot, make sure you set this top sensor to switch mode. So now you should have 2 pistons fully extended. And I bet you can guess what's coming next. I'm simply going to put on another 2 of these sensors and repeat that 2 more times for our final controller, giving us the length of our farm. With both pistons extended, I am placing my sensor on the very front end of that chest, setting it to switch mode with the range of 4 and connecting it to the next controller, along with the on switch. We need to program in those movements as well, just like so. And while I'm here, I'm going to do the final controller as well, just so that I don't have to come back and do it again. But as you can see, it's much easier to do these controllers one at a time, so that you can place the sensors in the right place. I find it much easier than trying to work out where it's going to be and counting blocks. I just place them exactly where they need to be. And again, sensor can go there facing down, 4, switch, and connect it. Now that our farm is fully extended, we've used all our pistons. In that very end row, I'm going to place another sensor set to 4 blocks. This time I am not going to set it to switch. Leave it as a button. And this will connect to our off switch. Wait, I'll go down and show you that so you can see it clearly. This last sensor is going to connect to this logic gate. That's our NOR system, and this is our off button. I do not need the button anymore. If you find your ground is too uneven and the farm seems to run off course and not trip the sensors up the top, simply put in a row along the side to guide the wheels. I'm going to use glass because it has low friction, and the less friction there is, the less lag it will cause. If the piece of ground you choose to build your farm on is perfectly flat, you will not need to do this, but you can see that the ground is not flat by looking at the glass block there. It disappears. There is a slight angle, and that is what was pushing my farm off course. So I've had to put in guide rails. So now your farm should be triggered by the first two sensors. Each set of pistons should turn on every time you get to the next sensor, except for the last sensor, which should turn off the main circuit again. And there we are, we triggered the last sensor, so now everything turns off and heads back home. That also means that we can end our farm here, again leaving that one block of clearance around everything. You should have a row clear above all of your sensors, so all you need to do is on the center of each row, because they're 3 blocks wide, so on the center of each row we simply need to place a block. That does appear to be the center, so have a block there, and that will trigger my first row, and then it's every 3 blocks you will want another trigger block, because each dirt tile is 3 blocks wide. So we're simply going to be marking the center of each row as we go down. And just double check all the sensors are set to 4 blocks to their maximum range. We should see it trigger, oh, let me get my lift out of here, each time it hits one of those rows. See, there we go, trying to harvest and plant. It's coming up red because obviously there's no seeds and there's nothing to harvest, so they both fail. The last 2 things to do is finish putting down my soil and connect up some water to our water cannons. Your dirt is not going to go all the way to your back wall because the last few rows won't get watered, so they will never grow. Generally that should only be your final 2 rows that do not need to trigger. You can actually even remove the final 2 trigger blocks. But the easiest way to set that, if you're unsure, is simply turn your farm on once you have the water connected, and at the end you'll see some blocks that don't get watered. Simply remove them. Should end up with something that looks like this. This farm is never going to use much water, so 1 water tank should be more than sufficient for several crops. Simply connect the water tank to each of the water cannons, and once you fill it up with water, and we'll trigger the farm to start here, we should have a fully functional farm. That's our 5-second delay over. We should plant now. Excellent. And we should start watering. The 2 side blocks didn't plant because I'm currently blocking them with my trigger system here. It will work its way down, watering or harvesting, planting and watering every tile, providing you have got the trigger blocks on the center row. And as you'll see, it also triggers on the way back. That is no good. So that's why we have these other AND gates up here from the start. What we need to do is connect our output, the same one that connects to our controllers, to each NOR gate. Sorry, to each AND gate, like so. Because that will prevent the farm from repeating on the way back. And there we have it. That is now a 100% fully functional auto farm. So normally these sensors would be triggered by fully grown plants. I'm just going to trigger them now and give you guys a full run of the farm and harvest and everything as proof that it works. That should start our farm on our 5-second delay. Remember to change this to a 1-minute delay when you are finished. to allow all your crops to ripen, as I've just done. Don't worry, I won't make you watch the whole thing. Now, last 2 rows. And the final one. Now it should turn off when it trips on the sensor. And the farm does not repeat on the way back, as you can see. As this is the first attack in low-level crops, I'm probably just going to defend it tonight by myself. But I do recommend you build traps to defend this. And there's obviously a million ways you can go about that. But my personal favorite are crusher traps. I will leave the trap building up to you guys, because I'm sure it's just the farm you guys want to know about. Another thing that's important to note, with your roof, do not build it out of solid blocks. Light needs to get down to your crops, otherwise they will not grow. So use glass or wire mesh, or leave it open and only have a few rows out just to hold these blocks up. I got a bit bored while I was waiting, so I thought I'd paint it, and it also reminded me to tell you guys that you never need to actually go inside this farm once it's built, because you can access both your harvest and plant chest from the roof, as well as fill up your water tank with ease. So you can put traps all the way around it, and you don't have to worry about having a door or any kind of entrance to actually enter the farm, unless you wish to have one. That's totally up to you. I accidentally forgot to record the harvest of the carrots, so I'm going to do it again with some beets here, but I just thought I would say it's very simple when you look at it complete. We use 2 sensors to turn on our circuit, which staggers on our controllers one by one with the addition of a sensor on each one. The final sensor triggers our off of the circuit with a 1-minute delay, and that's it. That's our whole auto farm. The magic is about to happen. As you can see, it would have tripped our first 2 sensors, which has started our 1-minute delay, and now you can see why, to make sure all the other crops catch up. I call that my harvest timer. I'm gonna skip the rest of the timer and turn around here so you guys can just see what happens. We're not replanting because I didn't put in any more seeds. But as you'll see, our harvest chest is nice and full of my carrots and now my beets. But obviously, if you had seeds in it, it would plant the seeds and it would just keep going and never stop. At this point, I think it's safe for me to say thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I hope it was clear enough for you to understand without me making this video 2 hours long. See you next time, guys.